I was really more of an appreciator and a mentor for artists and writers than a doer. I never thought I could be an artist. And so if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I might say, I'm not an artist, I'm an appreciator. But today I think everybody's an artist. It's just, are there circumstances that might bring you out to be brave enough to create in a way that's right for you? It was every demographic you could imagine, old, young, every spectrum of the rainbow, literally and metaphorically. We all came out and did something, and it turned into things. It was really beyond expectations. The whole thing is, it doesn't belong to any one person. You say I'm the artist, I coordinated it, but that sidewalk belongs to the people of Hendersonville.
Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Do Tell podcast, the source for fascinating and inspiring stories that help build and strengthen community and connectedness. Today we have a very special guest, an artist who is passionate about using art as a communal activity to bring people together from all walks of life to collaborate on public art projects, not only to beautify the community, but to inspire community service. Our guest today is Elizabeth Queen, an artist who resides in Hendersonville, North Carolina, and has led several art projects in various media that accomplish that goal. She compares her directing of those projects as choreography, which is a beautiful way to think of getting people to work together to create something beautiful. She's going to tell us about some of those today and the stories behind them and the stories that unfolded as the art projects came together. Welcome to the podcast, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Evan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here, and I know you've got some really interesting things to tell us. We want to get to those stories of those community public art projects, but first we want to learn more about Elizabeth Queen. What is your background, and how did you get into art?
Well, Edwin, it's a story, yet another story, an adventure story. But I grew up in a small southern town not far away from here. My dad was in textiles, and this was the 60s, so that was an interesting time to be a child growing up. Basically, my dad worked in the mills, and my mom took care of four of us, and somehow she managed to do pastels and introduce us to beauty and nature and the fact that it didn't matter how much or how little you have, but there's something beautiful that you can look at, but also maybe be inspired by. From that, believe it or not, I went into law and practiced law for a number of years in the Pacific region, based in Guam, USA, where America's Day begins, I think is what they call it, and worked for a lot of Asia Pacific clients. And ultimately had a family and brought them back to the South, to the Carolinas, where I grew up. And anyway, it's a long, crooked path, but everything's connected, as you'll learn about more as we talk. But basically today I work for a Dutch multinational by day and do risk management, insurance type work, and by night, and otherwise I'm painting by numbers with gardens and flowers and getting involved in the community and just enjoying this beautiful place where we happen to live.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic. That is an interesting path. And where did you grow up? What was the town?
I was born in Greer. We called it Greer.
Yeah.
And my dad went to law school when I was 6, and that was right when desegregation happened. And so I was in Columbia for 3 years while he was in law school, and that was an interesting time just to experience it through the eyes of a 6-year-old.
Right.
And then back to Greenville. We say Greenville, not Greenville.
Right.
And grew up there, and then went off to school in New Orleans, and then the world opened. And I went from that very close Southern experience of a child in the 60s, a child, not a teenager in the 60s, to someone who really looks at the world in a different way. And every place that I've lived, and I've been blessed to live in a lot of different places around the world, has really influenced how I see the world at home, which I call here.
What school in New Orleans did you go to?
Tulane.
That's what I was going to guess, but I do. Yeah. That's a great school. Of course. And can you tell us which Dutch company you work for?
I work for Wolters Kluwer. Okay. And it's a multinational company that provides information services to doctors, nurses, professionals all around the world. And in the 1830s, it was about books and publications, and today it's fully digital and artificial intelligence and cyber is our world, and I'm really proud to be a part of it. Speaking of stories, there are a lot of good stories there too.
And you've traveled, you've lived in a lot of different places around the world, it sounds like.
I'm married to a Scot. which is a different story. But we've lived in Amsterdam, Kuala Lumpur, London, UK, and then back home again in the Carolinas.
Right. How does he like it here?
Well, he's Scottish, and the Highlands of the Carolinas are
That's right.
a lot like home. And I think our history and heritage in this area is that the Scots, or we say Scotch-Irish,
Right.
came here during troubled times.
That's true. And it was a lot like where they came from, the hillsides. And
Exactly. And for him, he was a 40-year lifer with Shell Oil Engineering, and he found sculpture through his work in metalwork or industrial metal.
Interesting.
So again, another artist from here now who's based here who has an interesting story to tell.
Yeah. So when did you first really start considering art as a passion, and how did that happen? I know you were inspired early by your mother, you said, with the pastels, but something had to happen.
Something happened. Well, I got a Brownie camera when I was 6, and so started taking pictures. One of my daughters is dyslexic, and I used to wish for one day could I see the world through her eyes. And one day, not long after that, she picked up a camera and started taking pictures, and my wish came true. But I was really more of an appreciator and a mentor for artists and writers than a doer. I never thought I could be an artist. And so if you had asked me this question 10 years ago, I might say, I'm not an artist, I'm an appreciator. But today I think everybody's an artist. It's just, are there circumstances that might bring you out to be brave enough to create in a way that's right for you?
That's a very good point. I think you're absolutely right about that. And there's so much research going on now about how art helps people in any walk of life, in any profession. If they can have that creative outlet, it helps in other occupations as well. Even math and engineering, in a lot of ways, there's a creative process.
Absolutely.
And so the art, and it's a shame that art doesn't get more attention and more boost from the school systems, but I think it's coming back to some degree.
It's interesting you say that, because just recently in the news in the past 2 days, people are finding that gardening or being out in a garden or being in nature, inspired by that, again, creative process and the things that you experience organically, actually is better for your health and your well-being. And
Right.
But no, I think what you say is true. But that brings us kind of to community art, because I think a lot of people who participate in the project, we'll talk about in a little bit, would come to the events or the public paints and say, I'm not an artist. What can I do to help? I'll pick up trash. But actually, we put a paintbrush in their hands, and suddenly an artist is born. So it just goes to show that people just need a little encouragement and some materials or inspiration, and the artist is there. The community arts in this area are really thriving and emerging. Being a part of it, it really is energizing, and it's always bigger than you can ever expect. You invest a little, it's the boomerang effect. The more you throw it, the harder it comes back.
Oh, that's great. I love that. When you're out there doing what you're doing, connecting with the community, good things happen for everybody, I think. So
They do.
So let's talk about the project here in Hendersonville, North Carolina, which is called, there's 2 projects actually,
There are.
and I'll let you explain that better than I can. But one that attracted me is called the Beeline mural. It's a sidewalk mural. Tell us about that, and then how it connects to, there's another sidewalk mural that they join up together.
It's a very connected story that involves some of the things we've talked about already. There's a local gallery that represents my husband David, who's a sculptor, and about 2 days before a deadline, there was a call for artists by the city of downtown Hendersonville. Had gotten a public art community fast action project to do sidewalk murals in downtown Hendersonville, in a part of town that they hoped would grow in positive, creative ways. And it was 2 days before the deadline, and she sent me a note saying, you should do this, Elizabeth. And I thought, I've never done anything like this in my life. But okay, she thinks I can do it. She has a gift of making people believe they can do it. Right. So I thought about it, actually was in a yoga class at the Yam Yoga Studio, and thought, oh, I know what I can do. Hendersonville is a city of 4 seasons. I like beekeeping and trying to help people understand sustainability is achievable by anyone, no matter how big or how small. So what if we did something with bees and City of 4 Seasons, and I know, let's do the City of 4 Seasons on a yellow brick road that instead of bricks, we'll use bee cells, those little oval octagonal shapes, and we'll do it in the Fibonacci sequence, which is something my husband uses in his art, as do most artists, I think, really. We can't help but like it when it's in that sequence.
Interesting.
But anyway, so we came up with this yellow brick road for the beeline, and then 4 seasons we divided the sidewalk idea into 4 seasons of local pollinator flowers. And we were asked to write it up and do a little drawing and submit it. And so I can write. I did this. And I remember talking to David afterwards going, oh my God, what if we win? It's pretty good. Because I'd never drawn anything like this in my life. So the city of Hendersonville, downtown Hendersonville, had a summer. It's all about community action. So every event they had that summer, they invited the public to vote on the finalist 10 that they had picked out of 30 plus. And lo and behold, a really talented artist, Diamond Cash, and I won. And we found out in September, but we won. So it's like I ended up thinking, how can I do this? It's community action. How can I make this happen? And we had 6 weeks. So did another call for artists, because there are a lot of people who can paint and draw and conceive of the ideas that I had better than I could. And it's about connecting people in Hendersonville. And the response to that call for artists is that there were international artists who had grown up here, international artists who lived here now. There were high school students. There were 3- and 4-year-olds who had parents who encouraged them to create, and a lot of people in between who just like to make stuff. And I had given a call for these flowers for the different seasons, and they responded, and we picked the flowers of choice and did a call for public to come out and help us paint. So the morning of the first public paint, so we won it, and we had 6 weeks to do it before an unveiling ceremony about Halloween of 2021. The first day I drove out with my car full of paints, not knowing if anyone was going to show up. The city had advertised, come paint. And we were going to just paint primer. I had that yellow stripe, highway stripe paint that you see on the road. We were going to use that. And I remember looking over the 7th Avenue Bridge down at where the sidewalk is now. It was just an ordinary sidewalk, and it was covered in mist. And I thought, oh, my God, I hope people show up. And that morning, people showed up. We had a couple handfuls of volunteers. High school students started to come. And the next day, people had heard about it. More people came. And week after week, more and more people came to paint, do anything to be a part of the experience. And even people who were visiting Asheville had heard about it. It became part of the news, and people came up to paint. We'll talk a bit about different segments of it in perhaps a moment, but I will say that at the very end there was a big public paint day, and it was during COVID, so you have to remember we had social distancing and masks, and we had people sign up for different slots to come in small groups to paint certain segments of the sidewalk. You didn't have to be an artist. It was paint by number. We simply tell you what your section is, here's the paints you need, go. We had over 250, 300 people show up to do that day, and we had volunteers who helped get people to where they needed to be to paint, but we had children who had never held a paintbrush before, 1 year old. Their first dab of paint is on that sidewalk. We let them initial it. We had high school students there. We had families with quadriplegic children who were there, and that child got to smell paint and hold a brush in their hand and watch and be part of that family experiencing what it's like to paint together on this sidewalk. And even to this day, when I go to the farmer's market, there are people there who were children at the time who, oh, you're the paint lady. And they're like, that's my part of the sidewalk. After the ribbon cutting, a couple months later, I was invited to do a walking tour of the really beautiful Matt Willey, Good of the Hive mural that's on King and 3rd, and the sidewalk for the beeline. And my thought was, of course, I'll do it, but then I wondered, oh, what am I going to talk about? There's really not much on King Street between 3rd and Grove, where, or 7th, where my sidewalk started and Diamond started. So again, just kind of thought about it. We had extra paint from the last one. We had volunteers who wanted to come back and do more. So went to the city council and said, hey, you don't have to pay us any money. You don't have to pay for more paint. Give us permission to paint on the sidewalk this next story, and we'll do it because there's demand, and we can do it before Garden Jubilee, and we can do it before this tour. So it happened again. We just called out people and said, hey, we're doing this again. You want to come? And they did. And the city said, we don't want big murals this time because we will be repairing sidewalks. But how about low impact, where you just do the tracks of the animals who are the characters in your story? And so we can talk about that story in a minute, but it was a very fast action decision to simply sustainably use old paint, use free labor, and people who wanted to be out there to make something and be part of something bigger than themselves.
So the beeline came first.
Yes.
Can you give us the dates or approximate dates?
Approximately, the call for artists was in about June. Winners were announced in September of 2021. That was the second year of COVID, I guess. And we had from mid-September to the end of October to get it done.
Yeah.
It was Fast Action Community Project, AARP funded in downtown Hendersonville.
Great. And then the Lifeline, what were the dates for that?
The request for the garden tour happened in about January. I wrote the story
That's January
of
after.
22.
Yeah,
yes,
right after.
because we were going to do the tour the following, so it's really consecutively just the next spring. The story, Let's Go Hendo, was born, got the permission from the city council in, say, March. We started putting it down with the extra paint in time for the Garden Jubilee, which was about the 25th of May, 2022. Ribbon cutting again on Main Street.
Where does the beeline start and end, and where does the Lifeline start and end? And you said they're connected. So
Can I connect the dots in a different way,
Please.
as if you were going to
Please.
walk? So,
Yeah.
so someone who's visiting Hendersonville or someone who wants to do this, the starting point is at Main Street and 3rd Avenue, right by Hannah Flanagan's.
Which is
and there's a
pub.
hopscotch there.
Yeah.
And then the adventure begins. And that's the Hendersonville Lifeline, the Let's Go Hendo. And you basically go through and become part of the story, going through the sequence of the story, morphing into different animals as you experience life and change up King Street. And you turn right on 5th and go a block till you hit Grove Avenue. Our story, the Hendo Lifeline, stops at Grove, but the story also in the book and on the sidewalk continues as you cross over to Diamond Cash's mural, the Mountain Crossing or Bear Crossing. And you walk across that mural, which is a beautiful mural, and to the second Diamond Cash mural that takes you up to Maple Street, and that's Hendo in sign language, American Sign. Very vivid colors, and then you would turn left onto Maple Street, but the Hendo beeline starts on Maple and 5th.
Right.
And that's the 800-foot sidewalk that was the first one that takes you through the yellow brick road, if you will, of the 4 seasons of Hendersonville, through its flowers and pollinator flowers and all the different paintings, including the children's section. So you can walk that sidewalk and really experience different artists, different plants, and the community.
And that sidewalk follows an old railroad track, which is not in use anymore to any degree. I think occasionally you see one come across there. And then it goes down to an old caboose.
Correct.
Southern Railroad caboose, which is that a
Public restroom now, I think.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I
or a
wondered if
meeting
you could
place.
go
It is.
go inside.
Because I think there's a lot of things happening on Maple Street and 7th now, and 7th, of course, is currently under construction, but it's designed to be a hub away from Main Street, and there's the old train depot. They have train collectors, model trains, and different activities can be there. Of course, 7th Avenue is being revitalized, but the farmers market runs from about May to October, and live musicians, local artisans, local farmers. It's a great place to go, and the sidewalk runs right in parallel with that.
Right, and that's Saturday mornings from 8 to 1, I think?
About 8 to 1,
Yeah,
yep.
so you can go there, pick up some nice veggies, and then see the beautiful beeline mural sidewalk. So it's
Walk
a great,
on.
yeah, and that revitalization, I can't wait to see how 7th Avenue looks after they get that done, because it's going to be, I think, very nice. It's going to be a destination, which brings me back to, I think one of the things that Hendersonville wanted to have happen was to connect the main downtown section to the 7th Avenue section. Can you talk about that at all?
I think so. I think when we were going back to the city council with the second idea that connects Main Street to 7th Avenue, that was a real plus for the community, because it's something that they've wanted to do. And is how do we get people to get from point A to point B in an interesting, engaging
and a
way.
safe way, too.
And in
'cause
a safe way.
The main road you have to cross can be very
Right.
dangerous.
So I think that's part of the plan. And if you look at the master plans that the city has and the 7th Avenue community has, they're very conscious of that. But it's a nice different link that already gets people thinking about art and creativity before you get to 7th Avenue, which has a lot of really beautiful galleries and food and just different breweries, lots of interesting things to do. But the farmers market is just a terrific place.
Yeah, there's going to be some new restaurants and places in there as well once they get that done.
Food trucks, all kinds of good stuff.
So that's great that those two sections. That's a historic area, the 7th Avenue area. So it's good to see that being revitalized. And your mural is bringing them in.
Well,
so
it is.
Good for you.
I usually tell people, start at Arabella, have lunch or breakfast, have a brunch on Saturday, and because it's farmers market day, walk down Main Street to just enjoy Main Street, and at 3rd turn and begin the walk down the Lifeline and experience the story. And then when you'll do Mountain Crossing, you'll do Hendo Sign, you'll see the Good of the Hive on the way, and then you'll be at the farmers market, and you can walk all the way down the farmers market on the Beeline, and then you can shop your way back.
Right.
And then you can come back up to Main Street on 5th, or you can do 7th Avenue. So, I mean, there's different ways to do it, but that's a nice little...
Right.
If you're with your people who are able to walk a couple blocks, or ambulate, wear good walking shoes. But it's a nice way to spend a good morning.
Now, I want to go back to the theme you started with, which was the City of Four Seasons. And I know the Beeline, that's a prominent theme in the progression of that Beeline. Tell us more about that.
The Hendo Beeline is designed in a circle because seasons are a circle. So the first flower, if you start at the corner of Maple and 5th, it's hellebores. And those are Lenten roses that some people call it. And at the very end of it, it's that same flower. So actually it begins and ends alpha omega because you're really, even though we're not walking in a circle, the seasons of life
Got it.
are a circle. So we started with those, and as you move through the sidewalk mural, because you become part of it, you get to enjoy and experience different local artwork and the flowers. There's a lot of little things in there and lots of little stories in the children's sections. There's things that you wouldn't think of as pollinators, like frogs and snakes and ladybugs and wasps, that these kids came up with and just painted on the sidewalk because we gave them a brush and said, this is the theme, go for it. And they came up with stuff I never thought of before, which is what kids are about.
Yeah. It's interesting about the pollinators. I knew there were a lot of insects, especially flying insects, but I've never heard frogs and snakes. But it makes
turtles,
sense because they're
your
moving.
dog walking through.
Me?
You? Yeah. Did you know you're a pollinator, Edwin?
That's great. Okay, so you mentioned a couple of sponsors. Let's just give them credit here.
Absolutely. So both projects could not have happened without downtown Hendersonville, City of Hendersonville, City Council, Mayor. But Jamie Carpenter, it was the person who really, for downtown Hendersonville, organized the first event and helped us get in front of the City Council the second time. And so I give Jamie Carpenter from downtown Hendersonville, she's still very much an active part of that. The grant was really AARP and downtown Hendersonville for the first one. And then the second one was just the power of the community coming back and say, we want to make more, let's do more together. And so some people came back and some people were new, but again, we had loads of volunteers come paint those little footprints on the road.
Yeah, that's interesting. AARP, that's a pretty impressive sponsor to have for this. Can you tell us anything about what that?
Really, I think Jamie's probably the best person to ask because that grant was written for and obtained by downtown Hendersonville, and they simply were one of the. They were the main sponsor of this community action project.
Right.
So, but it wouldn't have happened without that.
Yeah.
So.
Now that's impressive. I'm amazed at the timing.
It was fast.
You are an excellent choreographer. So, okay. Now I'm really excited about what we're going to talk about next. The story of the Beeline and the Lifeline has made its way into another medium, one that can be enjoyed anywhere. I think our listeners will be thrilled to know that they don't have to come to Hendo to enjoy this story. Tell us about the beautiful book that came out of this project.
a story was born that ultimately not only is written on the sidewalk that's there today between Hannah Flanagan's on Main and where Diamond Cash's Mountain Crossing is. It's a story that became a book that's been sold on Amazon. It's been used for lots of fundraisers around town, and it's written in English and Spanish. So people can either enjoy experiencing the sidewalk and the movement that it creates, or buying the book and maybe having someone come visit who knows a little bit about it, and they can go walk it too.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So basically, if you look at the book, which you have here, it's Let's Go Hendo, a lifeline. And so there's the beeline, there's the lifeline, and that story is about a change any human or any person or being can undergo, whether it's the birthing process or the change in a job or a relationship or getting older. But that book has something everyone can relate to, and it's only 365 words, but it's all about embracing change, flowing with change, jumping out of sticky situations, facing your fears, soaring, and then dancing your way to the finish line to cross over and do it again.
That's fantastic. And you wrote that
I wrote
book.
it.
It's impressive. It is really beautiful. So I encourage our listeners to look for that. Let's Go Hendo, right? I'm looking at the Spanish, and I think that's what it says.
It's Let's Go Hendo.
Yeah. So in English, it's Let's Go Hendo. It's a beautiful book. Well done. And, it's really interesting because I've walked the lifeline and the beeline several times preparing for the project, and, once I was commissioned to do this. I didn't realize the theme of change, but now it hit me remembering what was on it, that's a big part of it. So that's brilliant.
Well, it's fun because people of all ages can enjoy it. It doesn't matter what your experience is. It touches a lot of different people. And then the book was sold at booths. I had a little booth and did signings and stuff. And I've taken it around to different places.
So you had the book ready at the ribbon cutting.
Yes,
Wow.
and the funny part, speaking of art, about that is, I told you I haven't painted except for that one class, and for us to publish the book and get the copies of it back in time, we needed illustrations, and I couldn't find an illustrator fast enough to do it. So I thought, okay, I'm going to illustrate. And so I had photography, and I'd done that little art class, and so I ended up illustrating the book, and then one of the Mountain Page Press had a graphic design company that's local that Lindsay really helped me a lot, just put it all together. So the images in the book, for those of you who can't see it right now, are paintings of local animals that are overlaid in pictures, photographs of local places, whether it's Carl Sandburg or Jump Off Rock. And so it's a beautiful view of different animals and places of Hendersonville. But if you're not from here, you don't need to be, because it's pretty anyway.
Right. That's fantastic.
The storybook, they're high schoolers who take the book to primary school students to read to them. The Hispanic community has enjoyed having a Spanish version. We have a lot of Hispanic people who live here, and having a language, a story about this community in their native language is a really wonderful connector as well. So the reaction's been really positive, both to the sidewalk and the book that just followed. And the book is a passion project. I mean, it wasn't designed to make money. It's designed really to support whatever nonprofit we go read to, and it's been really good that way. So.
Yeah. I should explain, we mentioned the title, I want to explain to them. I should explain to our listeners, Hendo is a nickname for Hendersonville. So it's Hendo. And if you want to find this book, it's on Amazon.
And Barnes & Noble.
And Barnes & Noble. It's Let's Go Hendo.
Or Vamos Hendo.
Vamos Hendo.
And in the book, we say that Hendo, while it is a nickname for this community, it's also a way of life. So
that's interesting. Well, I want to hear more. I've not heard that.
Well, in the preface of the book, we sort of have a epigraph. Is that what you call it? I think that's Hendo is a way of life, and it's really, the book is about human experience. And so whether you're from here and know about Hendersonville, or you're simply an individual who has experience, no matter what it is, this book is about that.
That's fascinating. I love that. Now, you told me when we first talked about this that there were some interesting stories about some of the people who actually came out to help you paint the mural. Can you relate some of those?
So there are a number of really fun stories about some of the pieces of art on the beeline. There's the international artist Jose Baero, who's here for La Vie en Rouge. He did the jewel weed, which looks like it looks just like they are. They're these crazy plants that are come up in late August, early September to feed the hummingbirds. And he got out and he kind of painted what he wanted to paint, and then he just started splattering paint everywhere in oranges and reds, which was kind of cool. But at the very end, on the depot side of the mural, there are two things that are kind of interesting. One is there was a young girl who was maybe 10 years old, and she was just this great volunteer. She came all the time, and there was a special curve there, and I heard that she might paint, and she was someone who liked to paint. So she did a sunflower at the very curve by the trash cans over by the depot, and there is so much energy and light that comes out of that painting, and it's all about that little girl, and she did that one. But at the very end, there are two things that are worth mentioning. One is a hopscotch board, and that is in the Pride flag colors. So it really is designed to represent all of the different flavors of our community, no matter where they're oriented. And two gentlemen came and asked if they might be able to paint the flag somewhere. And I said, well, how about hopscotch? And so they ended up volunteering, and they did both that hopscotch and then also on the lifeline. They came back again and painted the skin tone hopscotch board up by Hannah Flanagan. So the whole mural connected front to back are two hopscotch boards, and one is all the different skin tones of our community, and the other one is the flag. So that, and those guys were just beautiful. I've got really good pictures of them conceiving of the idea and then coming out every week to paint it to get it just right. Probably my favorite story of the whole thing is that when we did the call for artists, there was a really young kid, like 3 or 4 years old, who submitted a picture of a rainbow dinosaur. And it's this kid with a superhero cape riding this rainbow dinosaur. And I've never seen a rainbow dinosaur anywhere, but this kid submitted it, and I thought, of all the things that we've gotten for this, we have to have a place for the rainbow dinosaur, right? And when we did the book, it's the first illustration, and we took it, and the kids at the Boys and Girls Club did that picture. But when it came time to paint, that child wasn't there yet. And there was one kid who had been brought there by his parents, and he was a kind of that middle-aged kid that has the hoodie up, who was not happy to be there, would rather be playing his games at home on the screen or on his phone, but he got brought out in the sunlight to breathe fresh air, and he didn't like it, and they kept trying to get him to paint. He didn't want to. So I kind of went over and talked to him and said, I've got this problem. Maybe you can help me. I don't know where in a garden a rainbow dinosaur would go. You think you could help me? And he ended up kind of wandering over and found the place on the mural where it should go. And I thought, well, do you think it's going to bite somebody if they walk by? And he looked at me in sheer astonishment that I would suggest such a thing. And he said, don't you know anything? Rainbow dinosaurs smell the flowers. They don't hurt people.
Oh, wow.
And then later, it was just this really angry child said that. And then later, the original youngster came along, and I have a photo of these two kids together with the rainbow dinosaur that they painted on the sidewalk based on the submission of the young child that the older one helped paint. And it's just this beautiful coming together of different people who didn't know each other, that by the end of it, they were connected by this rainbow dinosaur. So if you go out and walk on the sidewalk, see if you can find the rainbow dinosaur, because it's there and it smells the flowers. It won't bite.
That's fantastic. What a great story.
One more story about the mural is at the very end, after the hopscotch board, which is an important part of it, is it's even off on the side almost. It's this Luna moth, or it's a moon moth, and because we didn't get a lot of nighttime creatures on the walk, but that was done by the daughter of one of the vendors who is part of the farmers market, and she was a really great volunteer that came back a lot. And at the end, she did this moth, and we wrote inside of it, "Be the buzz." It's spelled like a bee, but be the buzz. And it's all about when you approach things in life, bring your energy to it. Don't just do it, but be the buzz. Because I think that message from that little girl is what all of us should strive for.
I love that story.
It's funny. I was at Garden Jubilee last week, just volunteering at one of the booths. That's actually, I met you there, but a family walked by, and it was a family just a local family, 4 kids, and one of the kids was in a wheelchair. And I looked at them and I thought, those kids painted on the beeline, and went out and introduced myself. And it was the same family, and it was just this joyous reunion because we had that connection. Just anytime you go down there, you see people of all walks that are willing to just step up and contribute back to the community because we can.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So it really sounds like you accomplished that goal that we talked about in the beginning, that bringing people together to create something beautiful and not just for beauty, but for connecting the community.
It was more than anyone who had the idea about what this could be. It became something so much bigger than every single individual. I think it's one of those examples of the whole being bigger than the parts.
Synergy.
Yeah, it's amazing. The whole thing is, it doesn't belong to any one person. You say I'm the artist, I coordinated it, but that sidewalk belongs to the people of Hendersonville.
You choreographed it.
I choreographed
loved that when I saw that quote from you.
Yeah.
I said, that is fantastic, and that's exactly what you did. But you did,
the whole community came together, and it was every demographic you could imagine, old, young, every spectrum of the rainbow, literally and metaphorically. We all came out and did something, and it turned into things. It was really beyond expectations.
Well, this has been a lot of fun.
I've enjoyed it.
Eye-opening, inspiring. I mean, I'm just amazed. What I read about you online, and we had a short conversation before this, I was already impressed, but you came with a lot more than I was expecting. So
that's public art.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thanks for joining us on Do Tell, a storytelling podcast. We hope you were inspired by the stories today's guests shared with us. Please tell all your friends and acquaintances about our series, offering great stories from great storytellers in all art forms and media. We are on a mission to create communities and bridge divides with these inspiring and motivational tales. Thanks so much to our sponsor, the Henderson County Tourism Development Authority, based in Hendersonville, North Carolina, a picturesque mountain town tucked away in the heart of the Blue Ridge Mountains, where every visit is not just an adventure-filled sightseeing experience, but an immersion into the heart of Southern charm. For more info, check out their website at visithendersonvillenc.org. Thanks also to the nonprofit STEAP Incorporated, STEAP, which stands for Storytelling, Education, and Arts Programs. STEAP's motto is Connecting Communities with Stories, and they are dedicated to creating programs that widen social awareness and cultural appreciation across diverse communities. Learn more about STEAP at steep.net. Please like, follow, and subscribe to the podcast and help us continue to connect those communities.